Every morning outside this school cluster, there used to be chaos, traffic, honking, and worried parents. With four schools opening and closing at the same time, tens of thousands of children had to navigate this crowded road every day. Today, this same stretch has transformed into something truly special. This is 250 meters of happiness, one of India's earliest examples of child led street design, initiated by humankind.
Children are not seen on streets. There is no right to their city, especially public streets. They find their way to go to school, go to work.
In collaboration with local government departments. What makes it unique? This street was redesigned with children and for children. Their ideas shaped the colors, play elements, walking paths, and safety features you see today. What was once stressful is now calm. Children walk safely, parents worry less. Traffic has slowed, and a strong sense of community has emerged. Because when a street becomes safer for children, it becomes safer for everyone. And if just 250 meters can create this much happiness, imagine what's possible when we put children at the center of our cities. Hi Ruchi, welcome to the Human City podcast.
Hi, Ruchita.
Hi. So, what was the moment that made you decide children must be at heart of the city design and led you to create humankind?
So I think I have spent a lot of time as an architect, urban designer before the idea of humankind happened. And somewhere in my childhood, I started noticing public spaces and people. In fact, a friend and I used to sit at the bus stop and just observe people. And I think that led me to get into architecture and understand spaces, and public spaces were always close to my heart. And equity, democracy, rights came in my life, and I started looking at how public spaces, especially streets, were the mirror of our democracy. And in all of this, children were invisibilized completely, because the way our streets are, that will tell you that you have not considered a child, a young person. And I started thinking, was if these are the lessons or life lessons that children are seeing in their daily school going experiences, we are in a vicious circle and this needs to be broken. And that is how I thought of an idea, which was initially a social change project called Crosswalk, where we wanted to look at what happens if you integrate compassion in school going journeys, and why not ask children themselves, and they will guide us through the process. And it paid off. In fact, Ruchita, I must tell you, humankind is a mission given to us by children. So we're just custodians of a dream, taking it forward.
That's great. So, in the 250 meter of happiness project, what were some surprising insights children gave you?
It is 250 meters of happiness actually is the name given by the kids for their school zone. As I mentioned, I was doing the social change project under Dalai Lama Fellows, and I went to the principal and had this idea that I wanted to discuss with children and understand what do they look for in, or what do they want to do outside the school street. The funny part is, urban designers think communities understand our vocabulary and communities don't. But when we started actually asking, because their life is slow, they are noticing, they're curious about world, all those qualities, they brought it in the workshops. For example, why is a two-wheeler rider on a footpath? We are taught footpath is for walking. Second, why don't we hear birds? Why do we hear car horns? Why don't we have greenery outside our school? For them, even their school gardener was a caregiver. So their van driver was a caregiver. They were concerned about a cyclist who might fall down at the nearby junction because of the broken road, and this cyclist was not part of their community. So they were thinking about strangers, they were thinking about everyone. And because they also had classmates who were visually impaired, they were actually seeing them as friends. In fact, Ruchita, in one of the exercises, they nominated their visually impaired friends as group leaders. I found the richness and integrity of what they want, but for the community.
I understand your enthusiasm, but in the beginning, what's the most common hesitation schools had? And how do you select the schools?
The first one definitely happened differently than all the other works that we are doing. And I actually started with a footpath school, not a mainstream school. But again, the biggest challenge is that I feel educators have been looking at education which is in the boundary of the school. Just the street outside is not part of education, it's part of a different department. And this boxed thinking is what was the biggest challenge. I drew up the courage to ask the principal, look, working on this. Can I work with your school? And again, I'm saying that she just took a leap of faith. Henceforth, I have been looking at crash data around schools, and we've been picking up schools around the vicinity of crash locations to start with. So right now we are working in every district of Delhi. We are working on 11 school zones.
Apart from schools, your major stakeholder is children. So, what role did the parents play? Did you have to convince them?
It does, and I think that is where children helped us the most. In the workshops, how mothers are standing between parked cars and the cars are on the sidewalk, and mothers don't have places to sit during the time of the entry exit hours. We understood how parents with cars react and parents with two wheelers react, and the child is observing all of this. So, what happened was that we started putting together the proposal, and the proposal became an avenue to bring the parents. So, a week long open exhibition was held in the first school, and the parents came and we were able to do these one-to-one conversations. I have also sat in parent teacher meetings with workshop sheets saying, look, your child told me that you have jumped the red light, or you have not listened to them when they raised the right thing, or you have dismissed their question about safety. And a parent did notice this curiosity level increasing. I got to know all of this in the parent teacher meeting and the exhibitions, because they recognized that okay, this was the work going. And slowly when they heard, similar to how the children wanted things for their teachers and the principal, when the parents heard that so much has come from 9-year-olds, they were really one happy that the child is growing in the right direction, because children who have no rights currently in the system are talking about all of this for the other person. And that is how parents started collaborating with us. Mothers have played a huge role in our project, the first one. And through that, now in Delhi government, we have institutionalized something called as a road safety club. These core teams of each school representing every member, and therefore it becomes like a small mirror of your entire school system. When it goes in the real setting, they also, now parents share daily photographs of challenges they are facing, and government district road safety committees are chaired by the DA are looking at it.
I want to bring in the government little later. The one thing you just mentioned about travel choices, did it really change the travel choices for parents?
So I don't think there's a considerable change, because it's only a 250-meter stretch. But the conversations have started happening, and because this project has got implemented and people can see what an inclusive sidewalk, a cycle track, a livable, street looks like. People have come and shared, if this was done earlier, I would have not sent my daughter in a van. Earlier they were walking, but because the intersection was so scary to even cross, they started paying more so that their daughter can reach safely to the school, even if it was a smaller distance. We know many children wanted to cycle, and some have even started getting cycles more than the previous years. It's a very small shift, but it has made a difference in that community. The good part is that plans for expansion are being discussed. I think parents can directly talk to schools, school can directly talk to governments. Probably humankind is not needed in some time after this.
I guess we do need that who can be a bridge to connect these two stakeholders. But many people see street safety as an engineering problem, and you are bringing empathy, play, and human centered approach in this. So, what were the toughest challenges in getting these things implemented? What resistance you faced from bureaucracy, contractors, or maybe community?
A lot of them, and you'll have to do 2 or 3 sessions. But I think first we should not forget that road safety and streets is a science. I think first we have to all accept that it is just not design, but it has to be backed by science. And the science hasn't reached the communities. So, to take an example, we have road safety crash data published. They say 16,368 died in 2023, which are who are below 18. I mean, it's a number, it's a small number, but I started telling people that 45 children are dying daily, and that for a school would be one classroom eliminated a day. That kind of rings a bell. right? So I think the first biggest thing was how do you link data to their lived experiences. If they're feeling scared, it is not only their experience, it is a legitimate experience and they need a platform to discuss. For example, even in school going experiences, school buses have a higher weightage than children who walk. And this is the first thing I noticed, that how this education system is kind of looking at a child who's going by school bus from the school gate to home gate, but a child who wants to walk, cycle, their care extension is completed just outside the gate. So I think the best part of looking at a human-centered design approach and from a lens of compassion was to show each other's life. That is why I feel co-creation is a political act, because co-creation and design and children bring everybody together. This became a shared goal in the community. So I feel that if one takes them seriously and really sees them as equal, we can overcome a lot of these challenges. So not only we came up with one of the most technical executed streets for 10,000 children and 4 schools, but it is also now managed by them, because they said, this bench I designed, I will take care of it. I wanted street light, I wanted table chair to study, and you see all of them on the street now, and there is that sense of belonging. So it doesn't stop at safety only, because physical safety can be introduced by certain technical features, but psychological safety and belonging only comes when you see everybody working together, and that I think we've been able to achieve.
Yeah, this is great because most of pilot projects, if you don't really look at who is going to maintain them later, they fail and then the whole project collapses. Now comes the government. So how do you convince them this is not a civil project but something much bigger where you're talking about safety, dignity of people?
So yes, government is not monolithic, and until and unless all of department work together, uh, the the vision you have that your child goes to home and goes to school and come back safely is not fulfilled. So children, their vision, their conversations, and their belief in the government, they have so much hope in that government. And what happens is that if I talk individually to anybody in the government, they are all for a safer environment, a livable city. But when you start going top down, then you start seeing all these different complications. The skill sets are different, the competencies are different, they have to work together, and every department has their own process and own DNA. And apart from that, where you see major traffic challenges, nobody wants to do anything against the car. So even if you don't have 1 meter footpath, you cannot reduce even zero point 0.1 meter from the car lane. So this has been a huge journey. In fact, we have also worked with the political members in the first school, because we went through a ladder approach. We assembly. So the MLA in the first project pushed this project into the government. Seeing that as a legitimate process, he asked the engineers to review the feasibility. The Public Works Department came and measured it. I think the initial phase was not difficult, but we hit COVID and the whole project stopped. So in government and governance, realizing that momentum takes a huge energy. October 2021 process again started. But once the contractor came, the plan started shifting. So one of our proposals was, don't put everything as tar or asphalt, change the material. And Public Works Department has a civil department different, and an electrical department different, and a horticulture different. So it is not monolithic, and it is so fragmented that you're trying to bring everybody together constantly. I think the joy of building together is how I was seeing the project. Otherwise, it was really challenging to get this from a 3 month project to an 18-month project. But PWD has been very cooperative. Then comes the traffic police. So now they have started engaging with the schools. They had joint workshops. All of this is very, very new, I will say, for Delhi and India.
So, working with government for projects like yours to scale, you need government support. You need funding. How have you navigated that? So you have, allies who have actually understood your vision.
Yes. So I'll talk once about the scale. About end of 2021 or early 2022, the Transport Department of Delhi, which is the lead agency for road safety, partnered with us via IIT Delhi and we were able to take this process which we did in one school to one school every district, and we also started understanding the government component of it. So it was not just the state transport department, but through them we were able to interact with the directorate of education, the public works department, and the traffic police to oversee the work in all districts. The district road safety committees are our partners in this project. We were also able to go from one private school to 8 government schools and 3 private schools. So we also understood how our work is responsive to a government school. Government schools have a very different use case in India. In Delhi specifically, they have the same building being used in 2 times of the day. The girls use the building in the morning and the boys use it in the afternoon. The numbers are huge in government schools, and mostly they are walking and cycling. So this exchange hour, which is the afternoon hour, is a huge crowd management issue. One of our streets has 16,000 children. So far, all our people who've been working on school zone, they look at safety, line speed, but because we are going from the idea of what school going ecosystem should look like, these multiple departments, multiple users, and how do they all interact, and how does that the government make a ecosystem that enables safety from physical to psychological. Yeah. And so now we are 3 years working with the Delhi government very closely. Yes, bureaucrats transfer quickly, sometimes very quickly, right? And you have to start again from ground zero, because of the change of it's still, I feel, very individual driven. We have not still achieved that flow that it is endorsed and equipped, and hopefully in the future it happens. But we've seen not allies only in the IS officers, we've seen allies at public works department, at the JAE level. There is a wealth of experience in all these officers and officials, and just like we were working with the community to understanding lived experiences, we are also understanding how to navigate certain roadblocks which only they know very well. And we never wanted them to be only like bureaucrats or officials that they execute the work. Our mission is so dependent on co-creation, and it's almost like an act of weaving a tapestry for a city like Delhi.
So, was there a moment when an official actually changed their view after seeing any children's input?
I think everybody encourages that children are becoming partners. They also see that as an experiential learning component. So I have never seen a pushback on what the students have said. At the same time, because of the Supreme Court of India, all states are working towards a safer India. The challenge I see in the field is how cities are firefighting so many issues with bureaucracy changing, with officers getting priorities changing, officials, getting shifted, or, the same officer not coming for meetings. It just prolongs the process. But I have not seen any pushback yet. But I also expect a lot more ownership in the coming, years.
So, Ruchi, now I want to step back a little. Humankind isn't just a project for you, it is an entrepreneurial venture you started from scratch. Can you take us back to the beginning? How did this journey as a social entrepreneur, begin for you?
Yeah, so I always consider myself as a social entrepreneur by accident. As I mentioned, when we did 250 meters of happiness, these kids gave me this postcard saying, "Take this to all the children of the world." I was like, okay, I think I found my purpose. I always loved doing work on public spaces, and why only school zones design could foster so a new world. Obviously, you talk to your friends, and this was about 2018, 19, and they say, oh, there's something called as entrepreneurship, why don't you try? They said, do this pre-incubation thing. So I landed up doing the School for Social Entrepreneurs India's pre-incubation program, and then somebody said you should start applying to incubators, and I started googling. This Echoing Green organization popped up, and I was like, okay, let's just apply. 10 months later, I became an Echoing Green fellow, and life changed. I did not even have the name of Humankind when I registered for the application. So that's the craziness, that you just go forward and you start building as you move. So this is what entrepreneurship has taught me. I also have learned a lot about the kind of leader I am. I'm a very proximate leader. Echoing Green actually helped us get an initial funding, and that is how I've been able to scale in the Delhi government. Entrepreneurship these days have also taught me about what it's been to be a women entrepreneur. How do you create a village? So sometimes I used to complain that I have done the India's first school zone with India's children. I'm doing work across Delhi and in such a complex work. And still people ask me, why do you want to do it? And sometimes I see my male friends going just with an idea and they say, yes, tell me how much funds do you want? So in India, if you're a non-profit and if you're a social entrepreneur, you'll be seen as an NGO only, not an entrepreneur. But I think what being an architect, urban designer, a mentor, cities expert, could not give me. I think social entrepreneurship gave me that. It was able to help me navigate in these complex systems across users.
You're very right. So every founder faces challenges you've already spoken about. For you, financial was one of the challenges. Were there structural or personal challenges? What were the biggest hurdles?
I'll start with what keeps me going. What started this whole idea was is a school which is just outside my house, and that missing crosswalk became my purpose. And nothing has changed outside my own house, but some other community has definitely benefited. And that to me is an everyday reminder that if there is a will, there is a way. Honestly, Rachita, I thought of this in 2014, but it took me 4 to 5 years even to make that shift. And the shift did not come gradually. Actually, it was just one day I was standing it and my sympathy became empathy, and I was like, I have to jump into it. I had a little bit more flexibility, I would say. Personally, the challenges were about obviously you're giving away a lot. Like I stopped earning for a very long time, but I think that once you see where you want to go, that kept you motivating. Personally, the biggest challenge was that you were working, say, like 20 hours a day in a early stage organization. You are doing everything. Like I was very fortunate to find team members who were there for you through the day, but when it starts scaling, the pressure also starts increasing, and everybody's health and well-being start getting affected, including mine. And those are the challenges I feel that as women entrepreneurs, you get some form of a little more caring enabling systems around you. In entrepreneur ventures also, everything is for the organization, very little is for the personal. Professionally, I feel that people should believe and step forward to help you. Like a lot of convincing is taking away time from impact, and I feel that people should talk about the efforts to whoever, not just us. We will always talk about an Elon Musk, but we will not talk about somebody equally stronger, a female counterpart. So the subtle patriarchy, misogyny is all there somewhere. It's good that we are able to talk more about these things now. If an entrepreneur constantly keeps talking about the support, then how will the impact come? And if we only work on the impact, we don't have time to go for the support. We have built India's first school zone with India's kids. We have a model that could transform, making India the compassion capital for the world. And in all of this, we need everyone to co create with us.
That's rightly said. So, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs or city practitioners trying to do people centered projects in tough systems?
First and foremost is keep going slow or fast, but the ultimate thing is that you should be alive to achieve all of that in time. Second is form your own community through your past colleagues, fellows you find in incubators. They also understand your life because they're going through it the same way. Choose your incubators or your ecosystems wisely, because that is where time is spent and energies are shared. And keep a very strong belief in yourself, because what see others cannot see, because I feel, oh, we have visualized it, it should be built. So make wise choices.
Beautiful. So, now coming to the end, what is your bigger vision? Where do you see humankind in next 5 years? And what systematic change do you want to see how Indian cities treat children?
I think how we started with our biggest vision is to build compassion capital. And personally, I want to give it form, shape, so that what I am seeing, others can relate to, so that people see that there are new forms of currency where humans, animals, and multi species can interact. A world of friendships, basically. And these friendships are broken because either the systems are not designed, children are invisibilized, and one starts looking at children as young humans and not children, then you lose essence and what will be carried over generations. So stop invisibilizing children in every way. Question why the space, the system is not reciprocating to your child, niece, your neighbor's child. We are citizens, we have the power to vote. We also can go to our decision makers and question and do engage in co-creation. People are dying and people are also depressed. It's not a healthy world to for physical or mental well-being. So I think there is a huge opportunity to look at kindness, love, compassion as new currencies. And as far as children are concerned, I feel the more we can try in every decision to bring them together and make them equals or try to make them equals, it would be something that really pays forward for a long, long time.
Ruchi, what I take away from this conversation is that humankind is not only about creating safer school zones, it's about safety, empathy, equity, and it's also about changing the way we see children in our cities. So, before we close, if you had to leave our listeners with one call to action, one small shift they can make in how they think about their own city, what would it be?
A different future is possible. Go and ask the first child near you.
Thank you, Ruchi, for joining us today. And thank you all for listening to the Human City podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your networks and stay tuned for more stories of cities built for people.